Hey, what's up guys, Ricky Bush Racing here. Today we're doing something a bit different from usual. So I'm about to join AWAR, which is a league racing community, and I will have my evaluation race on Monday next week. But I haven't done any real league racing in Project Cars 2, so it's a learning process, I guess. Today's video is a little bit about everything, you know, car setup, league racing, pit stop strategy, and overall preparation for a race. An in-depth car setup video will probably come later on, but that's not what this is.
Will actually help with the balance of the car as now. With this, I'm actually going to show you a bunch of changes that I generally tend to make across pretty much all cars within Project Cars 2, no matter the track and no matter the conditions, and actually talk you through why I make those changes and what kind of impacts they actually have on the car and the handling. Now, when you go into the tuning setup and you go into the load setup, there's actually two baseline setups that you can start from straight away as a default. Now obviously I'm driving the BMW M6 GT3 car. It comes with two baseline setups straight from the off. When you look at other cars such as rallycross cars, some of the street cars and things like that, they'll have different setups from the loose and the stable that you can see there in the setups list. There'll be other setups there, possibly an OEM setup for some of the track or road cars, and obviously the rallycross cars will have rallycross specific setups for circuit racing, and then also for off-roading and racing across loose surfaces. So there's going to be some differences depending on what car you're actually in as to what baseline setups are here, but we're going to jump in and I'm actually going to load up the stable setup. Now you can choose to use either the stable or the loose setup, it doesn't really matter, it's more just personal preference, as I prefer a car that is much more planted. I don't really like it oversteering a huge amount when coming into corners and on corner exits, whereas some users may actually prefer that and enjoy the challenge of driving a car that is quite oversteery. So I choose the stable setup as a very initial base to then go and work from, as I'm basically looking for a very well planted and grippy car that I can drive with confidence and really attack corners with. So actually going into the edit setup screen now, I'm actually going to show you a bunch of changes that I make pretty much commonly across all cars and explain why I actually go ahead and make those changes to basically form a baseline for all my setups with in the future and creating track specific setups. Now when you go into the edit setup, you'll be greeted with the tyres, brakes and chassis tab, and on here you can change your tyre compound, your tyre pressure, your brakes with the brake duct, the balance, and also the actual brake pressure, the downforce settings and weight bias that you can see there. There's only a couple of things that actually change on this screen. There's a number of things work pretty well from the default and actually start to get a little bit more track specific and actually require a little bit more driving time to actually fine tune, such as the tyre pressures. These tyre pressures that you set here are the cold tyre pressures, and you want to be aiming for a certain hot pressure, and that hot pressure actually varies depending on the actual type of car and the type of tyres that they actually use. So generally for a baseline I tend to leave those as default, as they're pretty much in and around the right sort of area anyway, and it's very much track specific as to what kind of fine tuning I want to do with the tyre pressures. With the tyre compound, I'm happy with it being automatic by weather. It means that I've created a setup, I can just load it up no matter what the conditions, whether it's raining, whether it's glorious hot sunshine, or whether it's the cold dark night. With the automatic by weather, the right tyres will be put onto the car anyway, and I'll be happy with those. With the brake pressure, this is something that you can change for a baseline setup if you so wish. It's a personal preference kind of thing. Generally for me the default on the M6 GT3 is 93%. I'm happy with that, so I leave that as it is on default. The brake balance, again, this is something that is personal preference as well, so feel free to change this to your own personal liking. With the loose setup, the brake balance will actually be quite a bit further towards the rear. I believe on the M6 it's in and around 54 to 52 on the front, and then obviously it'll be 40. Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Insider's Guide to Project Cars 2, where today we are going to be taking a look at the very first page of the Edit Tuning Setup tab. Now, I'm at Monza, I'm at night, same conditions as I was in last week. Also in the BMW M6 GT3, and what I'm actually going to do is load up the default stable setup, and we're going to take a look at that and actually go through all the options here on this first tab, which is the tyres, brakes, and also the chassis. Now quickly, before I dive into all that, some things to note in the various tabs in the Edit Tuning Setup screen is it's divided into three main sections. You've got the stuff here for the left-hand side of the car, and stuff here for the right-hand side of the car, and then we have the centre column, which is stuff for either stuff that is found in the centre of the car, applies to both the left and also the right-hand side of the car, or is more a general thing and doesn't really apply to either. You can find those in the central column, such as the ECU and gearing, and also the differential tab as well. But when you take a look at the dampers and also the suspension, you can see it's split across the three columns according to the layout of the car. Now over here on the right-hand side, we've got help text, and that's available for every single adjustable option within the Edit Tuning Setup. And what I'll do is I'll give you an overview as to what that setting is, what happens when you adjust the setting in either direction, by either increasing or decreasing the value, and giving you a little bit of an overview and insight. So it's quite useful to refer back to that to kind of refresh your memory as to what it does exactly. But different things and different theories apply across different cars. So it's very much a general thing that applies across the broad spectrum of cars in Project Cars 2, but I'm going to be going into a fair bit more detail than that help text here in these episodes. And finally, at the top here, I've got an option to turn on and off the symmetrical editing of the setup. And what that essentially does is this will be ticked and enabled by default, but essentially stuff that I change on the left-hand side of the car. Say I'm adjusting here. Tyre pressures for the front left will also apply to the front right as well. If I go and turn off symmetrical editing, I can go ahead and adjust the individual tyres or individual corners or sides of the car independently from the other. Now I'm just going to quickly reset that back to default, so we're back to the default stable setup, and we're actually going to talk through the various options here on this first screen. And we're going to start off with the tyre compounds. Now, generally what you'll have for all cars in the game is essentially a tyre compound for dry weather, a tyre compound for wet weather, a tyre compound for all-terrain, or that will be called all-terrain, which is ideal for driving off-road and on the rallycross circuits. And then you'll have a ice tyre compound, which is ideal for heavy snow conditions, where you've got snow on the ground on the track, and also driving on the ice tracks. Now, as you can see here, the first default option, which is very much a convenient sort of thing, is the automatic dry weather option. And what that will do is, if you have this selected, is it will automatically apply basically the optimal tyre compound for the actual conditions that you're in. If you're driving in the dry, it will probably apply the hard compound tyre to the car. If you're obviously driving in the wet, then it'll apply the wet tyre. If you're at a rallycross circuit, then it'll put your dry tyre on, and then obviously if you're racing in the snow or an ice circuit, it'll put the ice tyre on the car automatically for you. But you can also go ahead and actually choose and specify a specific tyre compound if you so wish. So we've got the all-terrain option there, we've got the ice tyre for the BMW M6 and GT3 cars, we've got the soft slick compound, we have a hard slick compound, and then we have a wet compound. Now, generally, there's only really one type of wet tyre, unless you go to the road cars where you have a broad spectrum of different tyres available to you. You have essentially what's a street tyre, or the type of tyre that we will find on the car if you buy it out of the showroom. You'll then probably get like a high-performance street tyre, possibly an option for a track day tyre, and then possibly like a full slick compound as well. It depends on the actual road car that you actually choose. The high-performance road cars and the low-level track day cars will have a wide variety of different tyres. And obviously the street tyre will work very similarly to the street tyres that you find on everyday cars where you have grooves, and they'll work in both the dry and also the wet, but obviously won't work as well as, say, a track day tyre or a full slick tyre in the dry conditions. So there isn't really an intermediate tyre as such, or there certainly isn't for any of the race cars. And then generally what you have for the race cars is a choice between a hard compound and then possibly a soft compound. Some cars will have just a single dry weather compound, some will have basically a hard slick and a soft slick. Now, there is a difference between the soft slick and the hard slick, and the actual determinant of the screen, and you can see it indicated there with a little road, the actual track temperature, and then obviously the word track underneath it, and that is actually showing you the track temperature at the time in this race, and it will change dynamically throughout the race as well. You can find on pause screens, the pre-race menus, also obviously here in the tuning setup, and also in the in-garage screens and practice and qualifying as well, so you can keep an eye on that. And that is effectively going to be your determining factor as to which of the hard or the soft slick compounds that you are going to end up choosing, especially when it comes to the GT3 cars. So, which one should you go for, depending on the numbers here? If the track temperature is between 0 degrees C up to 30 degrees C, you should want to be running on the soft slick compound. Now there's a bit of an overlap here when it comes to the hard slick compound, as the hard slick compound will operate in the track temperature window of 25 degrees C through to about 60 degrees C. You're only really better hit that is if you're in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day, it's no clear weather, and you're out in the desert such as Dubai or one of the other tracks that gets really, really hot during summer. But generally, with the hard slick tyre, that is the tyre that you're going to be racing on 90% of the time. If it drops below 30 degrees C, that's when you want to start considering using the soft slick compound, especially if it's falling out of the window of the hard slick, which is the minimum of 25 degrees C. If it drops below that, get onto the soft slick compound, it'll work better, you'll have more grip there for those track temperature conditions. Now, when it comes to the actual ideal operating temperatures for the actual tyres themselves, again, is a little bit different here. For the soft stick compounds, you want to be keeping the tyre between the region of 70 degrees C through to about 95 degrees C. If you start going over 95, that's when you'll start to see grip loss. Be keeping the tyre between the region of 70 degrees C through to about 95 degrees C. If you start going over 95, that's when you'll start to see grip loss, and that is where you'll start to 5 degrees C. If you start going over between the region of again is a little bit different here. For the soft slick compounds, you want to be keeping the tyre between the region of 70 degrees C through to about 95 degrees C. If you start going over 95, that's when you'll start to see grip loss, and that is where you'll start to overheat the tyre a fair bit more, especially if you keep trying to push the tyre and it's getting above that temperature. So